I want to talk a little bit about the song Southbound Saurez because that beat is kind of a hard one to nail down exactly what he was playing. I've got several comments recently on the video that I just posted of this song that ask about the way the hi-hat part was played, if he played it with two hands possibly, rather than just with one hand. Now, the reason I don't think he did that is, first of all, the beat would be kind of awkward to play that way. You can do it for sure, but it doesn't feel right to me. And this is just my interpretation, but based on listening to this song over and over the years and really listening intently, it's very clear that most of the time the hi-hat is playing 16th notes throughout. Now there's sometimes where it sounds a little like maybe they're not all 16th notes. But for the most part, you hear this kind of sound. And it's not a real steady, like, it's not a very symmetrical 16th note pattern. It's almost swung a little bit, but it's not real triplety either. It's not like, it's sort of in between the two. And Bonham is a master of kind of playing in the cracks of the beat that way, of the time. So the reason I don't think it's a right-left hi-hat pattern, first of all, is you hear it constantly, even when you hear the snare drum hits. So that would physically make it impossible to do, unless you were doing some really crazy sticking to compensate for every time you hit the snare. Now the snare hits don't always come on backbeats. The snare hits, as you're probably familiar, change up a little bit. It's got a little bit of a whole lot of love kind of feeling to it. And what I mean by that is the snare comes on a backbeat once, and then it comes sort of on an and of the beat 3 just before beat 4. So kind of like this. Now keep in mind that's a very simple reduction of the beat, but I'm playing ghosting immediately. I just start playing ghosting because it comes naturally. I think that was the same for Bonham. It's the same really for most drummers who play with a funk kind of roots in their playing, which he certainly had. So if you're going to play that beat, if you listen to the isolated track, for example, of Whole Lotta Love, there's a lot of ghosting going on. And actually the beat kind of swings and has a little bounce to it. It's not, again, that's not a real straight beat. So with Whole Lotta Love, I'm just going to kind of play off the top of my head here for a second. But it sounds kind of like this, the isolated track. Okay, so more or less, there's a bit of a lilt to that beat. It's the same thing with Southbound Saurez, it's just the tempo is faster. Now, if you're going to play right hand, left hand on the hi-hats, you have to alternate your sticking to play it. Now, I'll play an example of that, and you can hear what it sounds like with the right hand, left hand. Okay, so that sounds pretty plausible and it sounds good. It's a good way to play the beat. It's just when I listen to that very clearly, I'm not hearing any, I don't hear a pause in the hi-hat for that snare hit. So that tells me, also, it sounds clear when you listen to it, but it tells me that he must have overdubbed the hi-hat part, because the way he plays that beat is a lot less rigid than the beat would sound if you're playing 16th notes like this. Also, there's only, I think, one part where you can hear the beat isolated without the instruments playing. I think a chord is kind of held out, and then you hear the beat for maybe 2 bars toward the end of the song. And I can hear ghosting happening on the snare. There's really no way to ghost on the snare if you're doing this. It's pretty much impossible. So what I think he did was, I think he played 8th notes on the hi-hat, and then he overdubbed a hi-hat part. So I'll play the groove like that, and then we'll see what you think. Another thing you'll notice is when that anticipation in the snare drum comes, sometimes it sounds to me like he's playing the bass drum with it, sometimes not. And that very well can be the case because it's an improvised drum part. Bonzo doesn't often play the same exact pattern bar after bar. So what I mean is, I'll play an example of this. I'll play it with the bass drum accenting with the snare, and then without. You can hear the difference. Now without. You can hear the difference. It's subtle, and when all the music is happening, the bass, the guitar overdubs, the vocals, it can be hard to tell exactly what he was playing. I do not think he was doing this, but this is what I did for the video just to approximate the sound of the actual finished recording. I played the 16th notes with my right hand. It's possible he did that, but I don't think so. And that's this. Makes for a whole lot more work, and I don't think it sounds as natural. Maybe I just don't, play it as well. If he played it that way, I'm not playing it as well as he played it then. But I hear a bit of this kind of feeling in the hi-hat. It's a little swung, kind of New Orleans, But when you play the beat, that doesn't sound like the beat to me. But again, it's open to interpretation, and I'm actually curious to hear what you all think the beat was. If you think it was right hand, left hand on the hats, if you think it was all right hand on the hats, and he just has a very quick and comfortable way of playing that rhythm, with all the ghosting and bass drum work as well, because that's the other challenge. Is if you're doing this, there's a lot that's going on between the bass and the snare. He's not just going. You can do that too, but I don't think that's what he's doing, because you can hear that breathiness of the ghosting, which he pretty much always does. And if you use Whole Lotta Love or any other beat of his as a reference, it's clear that he liked to use a lot of ghosting. So you've got this happening. Okay? So, my opinion is it's this. Maybe just because that feels the most comfortable to me. And then he did this. Makes me feel, makes me, yeah. So let me know what you think. Curious to hear your opinion on this. I'm also curious to hear Terry's opinion on this one. So thanks for watching, and see you soon.